Okay, so the story for Spec Ops: The Line follows Walker, Adams, and Lugo, who are Spec Ops soldiers in Dubai of all places, and you actually play as Walker in the game. And the reason why these three are actually in Dubai is to go and search for this guy named Sergeant Conrad, who leads a group called the 33rd Squadron, which is pretty much an army of soldiers, and find out what actually happened to him and the 33rd because they pretty much went dark. So they go in there, and of course, things aren't looking very well for Dubai. It pretty much looks like an apocalypse happened in Dubai. I mean, there's sandstorms everywhere, there's toppled buildings, freaking corpses everywhere, just sand everywhere too. And I mean, it's Dubai, so of course it's gonna be sand, but it looks pretty gruesome. And of course, these three soldiers go into Dubai and they find out a little bit more than they wanted to. There's a lot of things happening in this game that I do not want to spoil because it's a very interesting little story in this game. I just gotta say, I really love the story. First of all, the three characters, Walker, Lugo, and Adams, they're really likable, and I wouldn't say they have like chemistry as in they're like, you know, fun to hang out with or anything. No, they're usually either yelling at each other or arguing or disagreeing, but they're really great characters, very fleshed out. It's just a really good story, and it's very dramatic at times. It really gets you. It pulls some emotional strings. So overall, I really love the story in this game, and I'm very surprised by saying that. So let's go on to the sound. Now the sound, and holy crap, voice acting wise, you have a pretty damn big cast of voice actors. First of all, you have Nolan North, which is of course no brainer. He's like in every video game, and of course he's fantastic in this as the lead character Walker. And some of the other voice actors include Christopher Reed as Adams, and if you do not know who Christopher Reed is, I'm going to tell you right here, he is Kid from Kid and Play. Remember House Party? There you go, he was the star of that movie. 80s throwback. And you also have some Hollywood voice actors here. You have Bruce Boxleitner, who of course is Tron from Tron, and he's great as Conrad. And Jake Busey, who comes in later in the game as a character named the DJ. He's really good in the game too. He's insane, but that's Jake Busey, so hey, all the Buseys are insane, so you know, he did a good job being insane, so that's good. And the rest of the voice acting is fantastic as well. But now let me talk about the rest of the sound real quick, just so I can go on to the graphics. The sound design is really damn good, especially when like all the buildings are crashing and the sandstorms are coming through. But it gets a little repetitive with the gunfire. And the soundtrack is pretty good too because it uses some licensed music, and it actually comes in at really good times. So overall, I think the sound is actually really damn good. Let's go on to the graphics. Now, graphically, Spec Ops: The Line, at first, when you look at it, you'll be like, okay, it looks like a generic shooter with a lot of sand. But when you get into more of the immersive parts where you see like a bunch of destroyed buildings in the distance and you see a bunch of mountains of sand and stuff, then that's where you'll be like, wow, this is actually a pretty good looking game. Character models are great for the main three characters and even some of the side characters that come on later in the game, but you'll notice that the enemies are just the same masked guy over and over again, which is kind of lame. The sand effects with all the sand blowing in the wind and the sandstorms coming through looks really damn good. It's probably the best sand effects I've seen in a game so far. Even though I noticed when you're walking through the sand, it doesn't do that footstep thing like Uncharted 3 did, where you actually walk through the sand and you can see your footprints, which I was a little disappointed in, I'll admit. And all the animations and the gunfire and the explosions, they all look really damn good. So overall, I would actually say this is a really nice looking game, as long as you stick with it and you see some of the really immersive big environments where you can see a lot of the city just destroyed. It looks great. So let's go on to the gameplay. So gameplay wise, Spec Ops: The Line is a third person shooter with a cover system where you can blind fire, you can point out cover, you get a bunch of shotguns, assault rifles, pistols, rocket launchers, whatever. It's pretty generic, I have to admit. But even though it is generic, and I've played many games like this before, and recently, I mean, you had Max Payne, you had freaking Ghost Recon, probably 500 other games I'm not thinking of right now. I still have to admit, it was still a lot of fun, mostly because the story was so intriguing, and I really wanted to see what was going to happen next. And I know it sounds like I'm kind of slamming the gameplay, don't get me wrong. The gunplay is actually really tight, very responsive, very fun to shoot enemies. It just gets a little repetitive at times. And when it gets repetitive, luckily there'll be times where the story will just get so interesting you don't even care anymore. You just want to kill all the guys around and just see what happens next. And luckily, the story is actually good, unlike freaking Ghost Recon or, I don't know, freaking Call of Duty or something, any other military shooter out there. So even though the gameplay is generic, they do add little things here and there that are somewhat different. Like there's parts where you can actually command your crew members and tell them to go and focus on this guy or that guy and shoot those guys so you could go and flank. So there's some tactical stuff here which I really dug. There's also parts where you'll be like riding on a freaking, I don't know, helicopter, shooting a Gatling gun, or riding on the side of a van, shooting people with a grenade launcher. So they switch it up a little bit, but it always has to involve you killing a bunch of people. And also, I do have to admit, the AI for your teammates is actually really damn good. They know what they're doing. They kill a lot of people. They're with you. They're not like just running into a wall like in Resident Evil Raccoon City. Oh my god. But it's really smart AI, so I have to give them credit for that too. Now, the single player itself is about 5 to 6 hours long, and there are a couple of different endings that you can get. So if you want to replay the game and try to get the different ending, then you could do that. Or you could just go and play the multiplayer, the competitive 4-on-4 multiplayer that the game has. But like the single player gameplay, it's not really all that inspired. I mean, it has some cool things here and there, and there's some things that it actually takes out of the single player and puts in the multiplayer, like the sandstorms that will come out of nowhere and actually makes the environments themselves dangerous. Like you'll be walking on a covered building and you go actually walk over a window, like a rooftop window, and you can just crash through it and kill yourself, which is cool. There's some interactive stuff there and I like that, but for the most part the gunplay is exactly the same, and it's not all that thrilling. I mean, it is good, don't get me wrong, but I've played better recently. So overall, Spec Ops: The Line is a really good game. It has a fantastic story, great voice acting, really good graphics, and somewhat solid gunplay, even though I don't think it's fantastic. I think it is fun enough. So if you're looking for a new military shooter with an actual good story, then why don't you go try this game out? Definitely rent it, and if you can get it for like $40, then buy it. You might have a lot of fun with this. So overall, there you go. There's my review. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, and goodbye. Also, remember to follow me on Twitter and like my Gore the Movie God Facebook fan page. Links in the description. Thank you for watching this video, and goodbye.